Zaha Hadid has won all the top architecture awards, the Pritzker Prize for Architecture and the Sterling Prize, twice. This year, she's even been named Businesswoman of the Year by Veuve Clicquot. Born in Iraq in 1950, Zaha Hadid is now a dame of the British Empire.
The winner is a great architect who happens to be a woman, Zaha Hadid.
Thank you very much. My old accountant, he used to always tell the tax people that I was a ditzy princess from the Arab world, not knowing that I came from a family who did not believe in the monarchy. But anyway, architecture is no longer a man's world. This idea that women can't think three-dimensionally is ridiculous.
It looks like a showroom, but it isn't. It's home. Many of these things Zaha designed herself. She's loved playing with shapes, moulding her own world, ever since she was a child in Iraq. It was here, growing up in Baghdad in the 1950s, that Zaha Hadid's vision of the world began to take shape. It was a beguiling marriage of the old and the new, of tradition and modernity. Zaha, I'm looking at a picture of a little girl in a garden in Baghdad. It's full of mystery, really. Do you recognize her?
Oh yeah, I remember that picture.
What's she thinking, I wonder?
I don't know. I was preoccupied with something. I don't know what it was.
You were.
I was a very curious child.
Why? You mean you were curious about the world?
About everything, yeah. So I used to walk around all day, and I was almost like an only kid because my two brothers were already abroad. So I used to run around all day asking questions. And so by the end of the day, my mother had enough. So when my father appeared back at home, and he was very patient. He answered any questions I wanted to know.
Zaha's father, Mohammed Hadid, was the leader of the Iraqi National Democratic Party. He'd been educated in England. It was a cosmopolitan household. It's so extraordinary, this childhood of yours in Baghdad, because the way you describe it, it's such a civilized place.
It was an amazing place, really. Great people, very open society, fun, an amazing school, a nun-school. It was an interesting time.
It was also, you were a Muslim girl in a convent.
In a convent, and the same with the Jewish girls. We were obliged to go to chapel and pray, and then I used to go home and wondering why my parents are not praying, and they finally told me that, well, we're not really Christians, and so I thought at the time, so why do I have to do that, But we were brought up with that moment where, there was an interest in education, there was also interest in architecture, and so I think it was an interesting time.
Architecture was seen as a means by which Baghdad could build a new identity. The city looked to the A-list of modern architects. Frank Lloyd Wright, Alvar Aalto, and Le Corbusier were all invited to design plans. Walter Gropius's university building still stands as testament to Baghdad's belief in modernist ideas.
I think Zaha was given the sense that she could achieve whatever she wanted. It was a place in which modernity was just arriving. Baghdad, when she was a child, was watching Le Corbusier buildings going out. There was a Gropius building. the regime before the dictatorship was open to Western ideas and believed that women had a place in that. And that was something that was deep in her mind, and she eventually picked it up and ran with it.
Looking at the interior of your parents' house and this very beautiful picture
Yeah,
of
it's
the
beautiful.
room.
Yeah, the
It
interior
is.
was very nice.
And those wonderful tiled floors. and
Yeah,
that
they're beautiful.
Simple but beautiful cane furniture.
This chair, these seats actually were not cane. They were made of steel.
Wow.
They were woven steel and painted gold. This is the summer mode. You don't see a carpet on the floor.
No.
In the winter, there'll be a rug, a big rug. I think maybe by 11 years old, I was already want to become an architect. In my generation, there were lots of women who wanted to become an architect. It was not uncommon. And there were some women who were in the older generation who were already, practicing in Baghdad and,
That's another weird thing for people thinking about what people might think of Baghdad today.
Yeah,
The idea that women were treated.
No, I think that, I think what was interesting about that period, people had a kind of some level of freedom, that there was not such a weird thing to do.